Grace, peace, and welcome to Podcast of the Wills, a podcast that treats Star Wars like a sacred text. My name is Nick Milkey. It's Sunday night. I have spent the weekend in the woods camping with my family. It was the start of spring break. We got out of town for a couple nights, slept outside, had a campfire, and now I'm back to talk about Star Wars, one of my favorite things to do on a weekly basis. I'm glad y'all are here. I've already got people talking in the live chat. I'm so excited to see some of my friends. I see JD, I see Matthew, I see Framey, I see Michael. Excited to have more folks join us tonight as we hang out, as we talk about Star Wars, and as we talk with a guest I'm super excited about. And I'm going to get more into that in just a few minutes. But I want to, and I don't always do this, I always kind of try and set up a news segment of some sort. And there's usually not news, or if there is news that week of Star Wars, it's news that somebody else has gotten to. This isn't a news breaking show. That's fine. I'm glad to not have to be the news breaking show. But I did want to take a quick minute of personal privilege to talk about something that I think is really important. And I want to throw a shout out to my friend Pete at Around the Galaxy. Pete put up a little short video message this afternoon on YouTube that I think is really important, and I wanted to call attention to. I know a lot of our listeners, we share some listeners. We have folks that hang out in the live chat with both of our shows. But the video that Pete put up today talks about clickbait. It talks about the hateful nature of what clickbait has become, what it does in all different kinds of fandoms, but especially in the Star Wars fandom, which is something I have loved literally my entire life. Star Wars has been around since 6 months before I was born, or whenever it was. And I love Star Wars. It's something that holds deep, deep meaning to me. And when I see hatefulness taking place, when I see the things that we do to each other sometimes in this fandom, and certainly in our world, it breaks my heart, because this is supposed to be fun. This is supposed to be fantasy. It's supposed to be something that we laugh about. We do things like talk about silly Star Wars names like we're going to do tonight. It's not supposed to be something that not only makes us angry, but it's not supposed to be something that we use to generate anger or stir other people up, especially if that means that you're doing that in order to make money. And that's the way clickbait works. I'm not going to get into Pete's whole video. I'm going to encourage y'all to go check it out if you haven't seen it already. I'll tweet the link out from my account after we get done tonight. It's a great video. It's short. It really gets to the heart of the matter. But the thing that I thought about watching that video and thinking about it over the course of this weekend is, we say all the time that we vote with our dollars. We go and shop at certain stores because of the corporate culture, or because of the way the people run a business, whether it's local, whether it's corporate. And where we choose to spend our money says a lot about the values of those places. And your clicks are the same way. And so what I want to encourage you to do, and like I said, I'm not going to drag this out, I want to encourage you to vote with your clicks. I want your clicks to be something that reflects who you are and the values that you have, especially as a Star Wars fan. If you recognize that there are channels that are out there perpetuating hate, using that language that's pretty easily identifiable, remember that they're making money off this. And a lot of what they're doing to stir people up and to get these reactions is simply so that they can get money in their bank account. They're not changing what Star Wars does. They're not making people mad enough that Star Wars is going to go, you know what, you're right, we should reset the whole original trilogy and do it all again. That's never going to happen. That's not the way it works. We're filling their pockets with money by clicking on those videos. So all I'm asking you to do is be aware of what you're looking at. Be aware of the content. We see clickbait stuff all the time on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, and it's a way for people to make money. Click on the things that you love, share the things, have opinions. Part of what's fun about Star Wars is having opinions, having conversations. But what's really behind that? Is it to truly divide people? Is it to truly make people upset and to, in the meantime, do that because you want to make money? That's not Star Wars. That's not what George Lucas wanted. I don't think that's what any of us really want. So I want to shout out Pete for taking the time to make that video. I think that's an important message to put out there. And I want to say that I support that completely. And I hope that with my clicks, I vote to promote the hashtag spark of positivity that we talk about all the time, both on this show and on Twitter. So I hope that now that I've gotten that out of the way, I thought it was important to share. I'm ready to have some more fun. I'm ready to talk about my guest tonight. My guest tonight is a wonderful man named Alex Robinson. And Alex Robinson is one of the two hosts of Star Wars Minute. Star Wars Minute is the first Star Wars podcast that I ever found and listened to. I had been listening to podcasts for a while. A lot of that started with the Tony Kornheiser show. Tony Kornheiser's an ESPN. I'm a sports ball guy. Sorry. And I listened to Tony Kornheiser from the time I was in college, and he transitioned to podcasts. And then I found other shows like How Did This Get Made and some of these other long running podcasts. And at some point I had this little light bulb moment that said, I should look up Star Wars because I bet somebody out there is talking about Star Wars. Little did I know, there's like 78,000 of us. But I found Star Wars Minute. And Star Wars Minute is a show where they take Star Wars, they talk about it 1 minute at a time. Each episode is 1 minute of a movie. They work their way through it. I found Star Wars Minute, I think in 2015. They were about halfway through Return of the Jedi, and I was hooked instantly. The deep dive, the laughing, they have amazing guests. They kind of have like a murderer's row of list of people that I would love to talk to on this show. They've had Paul Scheer, they've had Doug Benson, Alex Damon, Nathan Hamill, Paul F. Tompkins, and especially somebody who I first heard on Star Wars Minute, who is now like the podcast maven of all and is hanging out with Conan O'Brien, Mr. Matt Gorley. Talk about people that you want to talk about Star Wars with. Like Pete and Alex from Star Wars Minute have the best show. And if you haven't had it yet, you need to listen to Star Wars Minute. I don't want to keep talking about it because I want to bring in the man himself. I'm excited to welcome Alex Robinson tonight to the show. Alex, what is up?
Hello there. After hearing that introduction, I think I'm too famous to be on this show. You're way too kind to your opening.
You are. This is a big get for me, and I tried to express that in emails, and I tried to kind of be cool and be like, "Hey, man, I really want you to come talk." Another funny story about you guys' show, and I remember this, and I have this kind of similar connection with my friend Pete. You guys had a link on your website at one point after I discovered the show, and it was like, should I be on the show? Click here. And when you click on the email link, it populated the subject line that was like, I'm famous, I should be on your show, or something like that. And I changed it to say, I'm kind of famous. And of course, I was absolutely nobody. I was less than Ray from nowhere. And I sent you guys an email. I was like, I'd love to come talk Star Wars. I'd love to be whatever, which you get a million of those. So I wasn't at all upset when you're like, okay, kid, cool, whatever. But I love your show, and I love what your show means. Your show has also brought, among many, many great inside jokes, things that come along. It also introduced me to one of my favorite concepts that I desperately want Disney Plus to do, which is the Aaron Sorkin Imperial Senate drama series based in Star Wars. Like, I am a hardcore West Wing fan, and that's something that the first time I heard you guys say that, I was like, the fireworks went off in my head. Like, we need that.
Anything that gets us more Palpatine, I'm on board. So
that's right. Anything Palpatine is going to get the job done. Well, I'm so glad you're here, and we're going to get into a little bit about your Star Wars story in just a minute and talk some more about what your show is. But I need to do something up front, and I told you a little bit about this ahead of time. I keep working. I'm on my crusade to be the Stanley Tucci of Star Wars podcasts. I'm making drinks every week. A lot of them tend to be similar to each other because I have to go with the ingredients I have on hand. But we're going to make a drink tonight real quick. I'm going to get my screen share going on here. That's right. We are going to actually make Alex's Drinking Bay 94. And because of the way I love Star Wars Minute, you have to repeat the 94. That's a key part of this whole deal. So what I have tonight, and I want to shout out, in fact, I need to go full screen for this for just a minute. I want to send a shout out to my best friend, Jason. He stopped by just this afternoon and brought me this fancy new rocks glass. It's got TIE Fighters and the Falcon on it. And so what we've got,
I bet they have those. I bet Lando had those on the Millennium Falcon.
It seems like Lando would have, he would have his own glasses. You know, it's like wearing his own glasses. The T-shirt of the band he's in. Lando probably would have done that.
Totally,
So what I've got here is I've got some ice. I've got a little bit of Irish whiskey. I just discovered this week this Irish whiskey, not a sponsor, but if you want to, the fine folks at The Sexton, give me a call. Be glad for you to sponsor the show. We have a little bit of ginger beer that we're going to mix in here. This is a little bit of a mixed cocktail. And then the recipe that I've got on the screen has a slice of lime. I don't have any lime, but I decided what I would do, and it helps if you open these things before you start the show. Pro tip, got just a little bit of grenadine. We're just going to put a little splash in here. It's going to give us a little galactic color, a little galactic flavor. And like I said, this is the Alex's Drinking Bay 94. 94.
Super. Now I noticed in your little diagram, you have little curly cues. Are you supposed to when you put the ingredients in, you do a little flourish to kind
that's
of
right. Give a little, Tom Cruise cocktail action.
I like the attention to detail.
That's right. It's either that or I have to be careful that I'm just not going to dump it all over my computer because we're walking a little bit of a tightrope here.
Sure,
but I want to raise my glass to you, sir, in a cheers, and thank you for coming on with me tonight and taking some time to hang out. So, cheers and thanks for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. I am drinking Cascade Ice soda.
Oh, very fancy. Very fancy.
Coconut flavored, so it's almost like a cocktail in a way.
It's tropical in its own way, like it came from the beaches of Scariff.
Exactly. Wow, you know your stuff.
That's right. Well, and we've got Framey. They had a great comment. They said, "What a beautiful color in the glass. Looks like a Bespin sunset." That'd be a great name for a cocktail too. The Bespin sunset.
Yeah. Although when you know that the clouds on Bespin come from Beldon farts, it's a little
that's
less.
Right. Beldon farts.
Less romantic.
It's not as tasty. It doesn't seem like. Well, Alex. Again, I'm so thankful you're here. I love your show. It has meant a lot to me as I've listened to podcasts. And at some point when I decided, oh, hey, I can do that too. As I said, me and 76,000 of my closest friends. But tell us about your Star Wars story, how you came to Star Wars, your connections early on. Did you grow up with it? Just tell us a little bit about Alex and Star Wars.
Well, before I start, can I just say I agree with your opening editorial there, about the positivity and stuff. It's just so ridiculous that people are using something as trivial as Star Wars to get angry. There's so many legitimate things to be angry about in the world. Like, why on earth would you waste your time in a children's movie about space wizards? Like, Correct. That's the thing. That's where you're going to plant your flag. Real brave stance there. Anyway, way
to go.
Yeah. My co-host Pete the Retailer said that there should be like a software app or something that whenever the word "sucks" appears in a review of something, it should be changed to "was not for me." Because you know what?
I love
if you see something and you're like, "Oh, that was like I really didn't enjoy that," it wasn't for me.
That's right.
You know what I mean? If other people get a pleasure out of it, who am I to stop them from liking the Resistance? So but no, seriously, I agree that. Yeah, we have enough things to fight about that certainly don't. It's a big enough playground. Everyone can play. You're not going to run out of Star Wars. So anyway, I saw Star Wars when I guess I would have been 6 years old. In the theater when it first came out in 1977, which makes me 42, I think, something like so. Yeah, and I remember it's weird to think of a time where I didn't know. Obviously, now it's my whole career, but like I remember seeing the movie when 3PO and R2 land on Tatooine. I remember turning to my dad and being like, "Are they on Earth now?" Like I assumed at some point they would have to get to Earth. So it's weird to me and I remember seeing the Jawa eyes and thinking that they were going to be like panthers or something. So I can remember a very specific time, pre-Star Wars time in my brain where I didn't know what was going to happen. So, but I loved it. And this was back in the 70s when the only place you could see it was in the theater. And, it ran for a long time. And I think I saw it around literally like 34 times in the theater.
Wow.
Because they brought it back. They brought it back like every summer because that was the only way you could see it. No one had VCRs or anything like that. So, and also, you could literally drop the kids off the movies, come pick them up 6 hours later because they've just sat through Star Wars, 3 times in a row. And so, the good old days.
The good old days. That's right.
When small children could be left unattended in the theater for hours and hours and hours on end. But and so. That was basically how I got started. I loved playing with the toys like everyone. And C-3PO was the first figure I ever got. It was a gift. I wouldn't have picked C-3PO necessarily, although I did like him when I was a kid. So any more specific questions than that?
There we go. Yeah. A little vintage 3PO. Well, I'd love to hear. I know, obviously, you do Star Wars Minute. I also know you're an artist. You work in comics.
I am indeed.
And I would love to hear a little bit about that, and certainly how that connects to your love of Star Wars and tell us a little bit about that if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I've always loved to draw, and I guess from the time I was a teenager, I decided I would direct that energy towards comic books because I love the fact that someone could just write and draw and even publish a book all by themselves. You know what I mean? If you could tell whatever story you wanted without interference from like the man. When I was like in high school, I worked on like basically a comic called Star Raiders, which was basically my ripoff version of Star Wars. And so in 1996, I started publishing a series called Box Office Poison, which was an like alternative black and white comic, and just strictly to amuse myself, because this was during the sort of dark times before when Star Wars was kind of not a thing as much.
Absolutely.
It was very rare to see someone reference Star Wars in media. Mm-hmm. So like when Clerks came out, that was like, oh my gosh, this guy's doing conversations we all have about Star Wars.
That's exactly right.
So just to amuse myself, I decided to include one Star Wars reference in each issue. I didn't say everyone, hey, find the Star Wars reference. Just to myself, I just said, oh, I'm going to quote a line, or have one of the characters in the book was really into Star Wars, so that was kind of easy sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the first time I ever combined my comics and drawing and Star Wars stuff. But since doing the show, I've started drawing a lot more Star Wars characters, where I'm proud that some I can draw without looking at any reference whatsoever. Sure. You know what I mean? Like I can do Han Solo and Luke Skywalker and all the classic ones without looking at Vader. I still need to look at it because he's got a lot of little weird details and stuff.
Little tidbits going on.
Space is very multidimensional. It's very difficult.
Much like the man himself.
Oh wow! You get ring theory.
That's right. That's right. It rhymes.
Yeah.
Well, and I know, and anybody that watches you guys' show or downloads the podcast, y'all always have such great cover art. And I assume that those are drawings that you do, you and Pete, different characters. I love how those change from season to season, as relates to the movie. That's a fun way to incorporate that. And then, of course, I know you guys also do Patreon stuff. And so I think that, there have been, Patreon drawings and things that I bet your listeners have access to, in those ways as well.
Yeah, I'm sort of Terry Gilliam of the podcast.
Excellent. That's the perfect
cover
reference.
All the visual angle. Although Pete does contribute ideas to our merch store as well. I don't want to take away credit from him for that.
Well, so, and like any good podcast, all it takes is like one side trail in a conversation to come up with that one weird phrase that somebody goes, that needs to be on a t-shirt. So
oh yeah.
it's a very, belt on farts, that should be a t-shirt, something like that. It probably was for you guys at some point.
I think we missed that one. We didn't want to. By the time we came, the Beldon Farts mania had been so big, we didn't want it to seem like you're cashing in on it. So
that's right. Bandwagon. That's a whole thing.
Beldon bandwagon.
Absolutely. Well, tell us a little bit, if you don't mind, about how Star Wars Minute got started, and just the fun ride that I'm sure that has been for you guys.
Yeah, I was the co-host of a previous podcast called The Ink Panthers, which I co-hosted with another cartoonist friend of mine, Mike Dawson. And Mike wasn't that interested, so like I never really talked about Star Wars on the show because he wasn't really interested. But at one point, I needed to have a guest co-host, and I said, "Oh, like Pete. I've hung out with him a few times. Pete, he worked at a comic book store, and so we used to call him Pete the Retailer." And I said I should have him on the show. And so basically he said, sure. We talked for an hour about random Star Wars gibberish, no plan, set out. And I was like, wow, that was great. That was so easy. And then thanks, Pete. And then I realized that I had not recorded a single word of the entire thing. So I had to sheepishly call Pete back and say, hey, would you mind doing it again? I didn't record it, I said, hey, I didn't record it. And he said, I'll do it again if you want. And I said, this is good because we can kind of use that one as a rough draft and we can, kind of fine tune it, get rid of the jokes that didn't work and just keep it. But no, instead we did a whole second hour of unscripted Star Wars talk. And we were like, wow, that was pretty good. We should maybe and so Pete was trying to think of some format for us to do a Star Wars show together. And there was a Star Trek show called Mission Logs, which does, breaks down each episode of Star Trek.
Okay. Okay.
But you can't do that with Star Wars because there's only 6 episodes. You're not going to get
That's right.
You're not going to get the chance to build up steam.
How do we make this last longer?
Yes, and so Pete said, "Well, what if we broke it down to minute by minute?" And people he explained it to thought it was crazy, and that he should totally do it. And so here we are. We later learned that there was another podcast called Gutter Balls, which started a little bit before us. We were unaware of them, and they do the Big Lebowski. They were doing the Big Lebowski 1 minute at a time. Very different type of show, but
sure.
In full disclosure, we have to say that they are, scepter evolution that we really came up with the same results. So
absolutely. Well, and I think that's really interesting. And I know there's an entire website. Is it moviesbyminute.com? Is that what it is? Where
yes,
you guys and the Gutterballs guys have essentially created this entire, I don't know if we want to call it a cottage industry for podcasts where,
format,
you've got, that's right. You've got Blazing Saddles, you've got Ghostbusters, Indiana Jones, like there are all these different movies, and you can go to this website and you can pull up all, basically search for your favorite movie. Has somebody done a Movies by Minute podcast? Is it
over 100, 150 now or something, somewhere around those matters? So chances are if it's a popular movie that you love, chances are some nerd is talking about it right now, minute by minute. So
well, and I know also, and this is another favorite of mine. Is it you and your brother that are doing Godfather Minute, or is that Pete?
That's right. Okay. No, that's my brother and I. We're doing Godfather Minute. We only do 1 episode a week, 1 minute per week. So it took us about 3 years to get through the first Godfather Part 1. We just started Godfather Part 2. So if you're interested in listening to us talk about The Godfather, perfect time to get on board.
That's right. See, plugs galore. I do check the Movies by Minute website every now and then because there is that little part of me, and you guys actually did it as an April Fool's joke for 1 episode a while back. But I check back every now and then because I feel like there's room for Spaceballs the Minute to actually be a whole fully fleshed out thing. And of course I go to, the shots of Mel Brooks and it's Spaceballs the movie with the merchandise and the whole thing. And so to me, I'm like, it's just Spaceballs the Minute. Like that's just what it's called. So
it's tricky with comedies. It's tricky with comedies because the risk is that you just go like, oh, and here they caught the doubles. They caught them, but it was really that you're just kind of explaining jokes. So it's a tricky rope.
I'm sure that's one. That's why I haven't done it yet. That must be it. That's
somebody's going to do it eventually. So
that's right. Well, maybe I'll just get to be their guest. I don't know. Well, and I did this, and this is a very unofficial count, and all I based it on was the Star Wars movies I know that y'all have done so far, and I know that you are, I think as of Friday, you're up to minute 35 of The Last Jedi that dropped this week. Right. So based on that math, that's 1,235 minutes just with the movies you've done so far. Now, I know there have been special episodes that's been...
Wait, is that a number of episodes you're talking about now?
That's the runtime of the movie, the actual movies you have done so far.
Okay, not how much time we've spent talking about.
I was gonna say you've spent way more than that. Yeah, okay. No doubt about it.
So wow, 1,000. How much was it?
1,235.
1,235. I gotta tell Pete that I'll be excited.
Now,
I wish you told me on Thursday. It would have been 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh well.
See, God,
I'm gonna say you told me on Thursday.
That's right.
Tell him that. 1, 2, 3, 4 back then. No one tell Pete.
And that doesn't take into account, April Fool's episodes and live episodes and special things. All I did in my quick math was I did the run times for the movies you have done so far, including the 35 minutes of Last Jedi to this point. So
wow, that's plus we've done over 300 Patreon episodes.
See,
so there's a lot of. If you want to listen to us talk, there's no lack of material.
You're not going to run out of opportunities. Well, it's a fantastic show.
I think we have officially spent more time talking about Star Wars than George Lucas ever talked about Star Wars.
I think that probably relates to most podcasters at this point. as I say all the time, we've done 2-hour podcasts about a movie trailer that was less than 2 minutes long. So
Right.
I don't know if George ever imagined people were going to be doing that kind of thing. Well, as I have said, it's a fabulous show. And if any of our listeners,
Thanks.
either in the live chat or anybody that's going to download the audio version later this week, if you haven't subscribed to Star Wars Minute, what are you doing? Go subscribe. Go back. There's back catalog. I'm sorry. It's so fun. And the things that I love about it, it's happy, it's positive. There's plenty of puns and dad jokes. As a dad, I make dad jokes all the time. Puns are an important part of my life. And again, the little things, the repetition of 94 or long time,
94.
or, echoing Star Wars Minute every time somebody says Star Wars Minute. Like, I find myself saying it in the car when you guys are saying it watching the show, because it just becomes ingrained in the culture of the show. But it's a fun show, and it's the kind, to go back to, again, that editorial moment up front, it's the kind of stuff that we should be doing in Star Wars. It's the kind of stuff that it's supposed to be fun. If Star Wars makes us mad, we need to get out. Like, what are we still doing here?
Yeah.
And Star Wars Minute doesn't make anybody mad. It's a fun show. It's a good time. Y'all have amazing guests, not just the ones I've listed, but you have comedians, you have friends of y'all's, you have, all these different people that come along, and there's always something to look forward to. You have, Chrysanthi comes on and talks about music, and that's always fascinating because that's another beat that I haven't stopped to think about. Or, there's so much in your show that I think people that haven't found it yet need to get plugged into.
Yeah, well, since you just mentioned Chrysanthi, I want to also give a plug to her recent podcast called Star Wars Minute Music. I think that's what it's called, or it's called Star Wars Music Minute. I'm not sure which one it is, but if you Google, if you put that in your search for podcasts, because she has started a companion podcast to ours, where she takes the week's worth of episodes that we've discussed and specifically talks about the music during those minutes. So people should check that out. So
that's outstanding. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially if you love the music, but she always just has such great insight anyhow. So another one of your all-star wonderful guests that, people get to know through listening to your show. So one of the things that you guys talk about a lot on your show, and it comes up because, of course, when you talk about a movie a minute at a time, there's some deep dives. There's some, where did this come from? How are we going to, I think back to the days like the Phantom Menace days when you had to do like 2 or 3 weeks of the pod race. Or, the opening crawl and credits minutes, like those minutes, sometimes they might drag, or sometimes you have to mine a little bit more for the content. Yeah. But something that always delivers for me as a listener is talk about like the minutia. How did this get created? What, where did this come from? And names never fail to deliver in Star Wars. There are so many great things about names. I have a buddy of mine, shout out to my friend Chad Gibbs, who's an author and has written several books. And I have said to him on occasion, I'm like, that might be the most daunting part of being an author, would be to like name stuff and not sound like you're trying too hard to name it. If you're writing a science fiction book, to name it something too spacey, or, how many Patricks are there in Star Wars? Probably not any. So I have to find that middle ground of, how does a name work? And so to think about some of these names. And so our top 7 list tonight, and what we're going to get into, I asked Alex to make me a list of his top 7 Star Wars names. And what he told me as we were kind of communicating back and forth was, they may not necessarily be his favorite, but they were ones that had good stories to them. And so I think that's an excellent way to do this list. I'm going to try to navigate a little bit of technology here as we do this. And so we're going to get a little bit of picture, a little bit of visual, but our first one at number 7 is a classic. And we have our princess. What did I do here? Oh, here we go. Leia Organa. Leia Organa at number 7. Tell us about why this was your number 7 on our list.
Well, I'm more or less, like I said, I wanted to go for more interesting backstories. Obviously, Leia Organa, an interesting character, but she's emblematic of the very old original George Lucas era. And because when Star Wars first came out, several of the characters refer to our princess as Princess Leia. Princess Leia, before your
Princess
execution,
Leia.
the plans provided by Princess Leia will tell us this at the Death Star. So since then, it has been retconned where everyone calls her Leia. No one calls her Leia anymore, except for as a knowing wink back to the old days of that. So I picked this name because it also harkens back to a simpler, it was a simpler time where there was just much less media around to be Han. Han is also another name that Han or Han. Still time to save Han. So,
and I love talking about that particular note. You have that where Chewie's choking Lando, and he says, "There's still time to save Han." And they bring that back in Solo when they're playing cards, and he says, Han, and he's like, "It's Han, but it's fine." Like, I love that modern Star Wars allows us to, connect those dots or have those moments like that.
So Leia Organa, and is coming in at number 7 because no one was sure how to pronounce her name back in the 70s.
I think that's an excellent way to do that. And it almost feels like, I just kind of actually heard this as you said, Leia Organa. My wife and I are in the process of rewatching Game of Thrones. And I almost feel like the name Leia Organa deserves those kind of Game of Thrones qualifiers, like first of her name, queen of all the so-and-so. Like, it lends itself to title, which isn't necessarily unfamiliar because she grew up, the daughter of a politician and a ruler. And, we read, and especially as you get into some of those books, like the younger Leia book, and Bloodline and some of that, where they talk about, her growing up on Alderaan and some of that. So it could totally fit. And I love that it feels like a regal name, Princess Leia, Princess Leia, Princess whatever. And similar to, like we were talking about, the beats in the new movies. That's right. Just don't call her late for dinner. But I also love the little beats that they add in at the beginning of Force Awakens when Poe is talking to Lor Santeca, and he says, General Organa said such and such, and he says, "General, she'll always be royalty to me." Like, we've got those little beats, those little connections that you just go, yeah, she's a princess, and it's a different thing, which also makes me think of Tina Fey in 30 Rock when she got married and she said, "Everybody wants a princess wedding," and she dressed up like Leia. She goes, "Hey, I'm a princess." So there's way for that to go. So that's a great number 7.
Well, also Organa, back in the original Star Wars, aka New Hope, part of the message was about like our technology versus, I guess organic. You know what I mean? So it's kind of letting you know that she's kind of the organic side of it, as opposed to the technocrats running the empire.
That's right. So she's the grassroots. She's the grassroots movement as opposed to the big imperial machine.
Seems like she should be running like a health food store with a name like that.
That's exactly right. Leia's Organa snack bars or something. Well, next we have a great one. We have our man Mace Windu at number 6.
Yes, Mace Windu, I put on the list, because his name is Windu when he dies by being thrown out a window. But, dies. But right. Mace Windu's name, Mace Windu, this is, so as an origin of names, at one point George Lucas famously wrote all his scripts on yellow legal pads. But at one point he had just lists of names that could be used for anything. Like, and Mace, he really wanted to call somebody Mace. Eagle-eyed listeners or viewers will know that in the first Ewok movie, that character was called Mace.
That's right.
The boy character in that. So, and if you go back to George Lucas's notes from 1977, there's all these names like Mace Windu that would show up in the prequels that were either names from original drafts of Star Wars or that were just part of this random list of names that, he would say, well, okay, so what are we going to call these knights? Are we going to call them Windus? Are we going to call them, he was and then he's like Jedi. Okay, that's out of this list of names I have. So you can just picture him working around the day, just coming up with random jibber jabber names. That would be a good Star Wars name. Let me just put that down on the list, and and he didn't let anything go to waste. So
what about this name that doesn't have any vowels in it? Sure, write it down. Let's just keep going.
So I don't know if he was finally like, I'm gonna have him get thrown out the window. I can finally use that Mace Windu name for somebody. Finally. So
that is now headcanon for me that's how that happened.
Yes, totally. And then when he comes back, as a cyborg, he'll totally have a hand that is a mace.
That's right.
Completing his destiny.
It will be legitimate Mace Windu. It's like Mace Windu and chainsaw arm, something like that.
They should have like a thing where all the people you think are dead on Star Wars and do a whole storyline, where it's Darth Maul and Mace Windu and all these characters that you assumed were dead, but that are actually living a whole nother sort of underground secret life.
Maybe those characters, that whole group, it needs to be a Star Wars version of like the Big Brother house. All the people you think are dead all have to live in a house and compete either for love or like a prize, or they get out of there.
The winner gets brought back to life and put back into the story.
It's back into the story.
Yeah.
Like, I like that.
Like that. Alternately, you have characters from Legends all living in a house together, and the winner gets to become
canon. There you go.
So
everybody I feel like in that one has their early money on Mara Jade, because she's the last one hanging out that everybody's like, wait, what about her? Although there's some other good ones out there.
Yeah.
Well, number 5. Let's jump into number 5. This is another great one. We have our man Newt Gunray.
Now, Newt Gunray is also from the Lucas era, obviously. And younger people might not realize that his name is a Tuckerization, which I'll get to in a little bit, of the name Newt Gingrich, who at one point was our Speaker of the House 1,000 years ago.
Correct.
So for people who are saying, I don't like politics and Star Wars and stuff, clearly here's an example of Lucas having a villain with the name of a prominent Republican politician. So you can't get much more that. And Gunray is almost like Ray Gun, which is like Ronald Reagan, which is the same lineage. So
no doubt. And not only does it lend itself to the political side, but to me, I hear that, and I also hear from the Ray Gun standpoint, the Buck Rogers thing that was such an influence for Lucas and those other early space, 50s. He shot him with his ray gun or his laser sword or his whatever. It lends itself to a little bit of that too. But
I wonder if ray guns will ever show up in Star Wars. The name Ray, like, give me your ray gun. It just sounds so weird.
That's right.
I guess they just call them blasters. They never call them ray guns. But
that's right. It had to have a little bit more of that. Again, the lived-in, real-world feel. Nobody's out on the range in the U.S. Army now. Give me a firearm. They're like, hand me that gun.
Yeah, give me a bullet gun.
give me a bullet launcher thing.
Yeah, it's the same way you can tell if someone's old if they say cell phone. Because
that's right.
People just say phones. They don't say.
That's right. It's just a phone. There's no differentiation here. Yeah. Where's your cellular telephone? Well, the next one crank the handle. Opie, Mayberry style, where you just tell somebody who you want to talk to.
Yeah.
I grew up in Central Illinois before we moved to Alabama years ago. And my grandparents lived in a small farm town in Illinois where it said on the sign as you drove into town, population 350 people. And for a period of time when I was younger, and especially when my mom was growing up there, when you called somebody on the phone, because the 3 digits at the beginning of the phone number were all the same, you only had to punch in the last 4 in order to call somebody else in town. And then eventually, the big world came and you had to use all 10 digits. So it's the crazy the way technology goes, I guess.
We'll never be that simple again.
That's right. Never again. I don't know anybody's phone number because it's in my cellular phone.
Yeah, I always remember my brother's number if I ever go to jail. That way I can I always keep one in my noggin.
That's the one you need right there. Well,
Yeah.
well, let's move to number 4. This is an excellent one, and I love this one. We have our man Danger.
Yes. Now, once George Lucas, in between the original trilogy and the prequels, what's called the Dark Times, there was very little Star Wars stuff going on. But one thing, there was a sort of underground of like card games and role playing games, and who would license Star Wars, and they like said, okay, well, now we have all these characters that need names. How are we going to come up with names for all these hundreds of minor little characters? So, in case of Danger here, they basically took his line of dialogue, holding her is dangerous, and just made his name Danger. And there's a bunch of characters, particularly Imperial officers, who get their names from their line of dialogue that they say. And it's kind of a quaint thing that you don't see very much anymore. And I kind of would like it if Pablo Hidalgo kind of did a little tip of the Imperial's cap and started naming people after their lines of dialogue. So
I think that would be fantastic. Well, and it begs to me, the real question is, what is Danger's middle name? Because because for Austin Powers, Danger was his middle name. But what is Danger's middle name?
That's weird. Oh my gosh, you totally just blew my mind. I don't know what it's going to be, but
that's right. Pablo, hook us up. We need Danger's middle name. And I guess
also Danger and a bunch of Imperial officers from the original movie are all dubbed by American actors. So it's another little bit of trivia for you there.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, as we move through the list, we have a couple more that I'm so excited about that we're going to keep going with number 3. This young man right here. Oh, the tragic story.
Jukasa, the sad Jedi boy who does not live to become a man because he gets killed by clone troopers when they're storming the Sith temple. Well, Windu was originally a Sith temple, but
it turns out
that's the voice you use whenever you're, as a nerd, you're embarrassed that you know a piece of information. So you're trying to
I always do the glasses adjust. That's my move.
Well, actually. Anyway, Zet Jukasa, as many of you probably know, is played by a young actor by the name of Jet Lucas, whose father, get this, was the director of the movie. And but that's not why I have him here. I have him here because he's a great example of what's called Tuckerization, where you take the actor's name or the name you're trying to hide, and you just kind of scramble the letters around, sometimes sonically, sometimes, but it's you can kind of see it if you know the person's name. Sometimes, obviously, like this one doesn't have an L in it, Zet Jukasa, but there's enough in it there where you could probably piece it together. And
it's not that far away.
Yeah, this is by far the most common way of naming characters in the modern era, the post-Lucas era, because you can really. It's probably a lot easier. I imagine a lot of these characters now are named by Pablo Hidalgo when he comes out with the visual encyclopedias. Encyclopedia. Sorry, Pete.
That's right.
And so a lot of them are like the actor's name kind of scrambled up, or sometimes I think we just found out that some character was named after someone else's kids. Like they named. Like there's a character whose name was a combination of 2 other people's kids. And I'm like, if I'm the actor, I'd be mad that my character is named after someone else, of the producer's kids or something like that.
What about my kids?
Yeah, exactly. So maybe their name just wasn't good for Tuckerization or something. Maybe it was too hard to mix
Sometimes
up.
Sometimes you gotta have the right name. Well, because you mentioned Pablo, and we have a couple of times, and again, those visual dictionaries and fleshing out all that information is so great. I personally have not made my way to Light of the Jedi yet. It is on my list of things to get to, but apparently, according to the live chat, there's a character in Light of the Jedi called Paulo Hidalgo that is going to appear. And I mean, you got to keep it going.
Didn't they already do a Pablo Hidalgo stand-in Rebels? I thought there was a character who was Pablo Hidalgo in Rebels already.
And
maybe
there may be well, there's another one, and I've got a couple of bonus ones that we're going to get to when we finish your list. So there's another story group one that is in Rebels. So maybe that's what you're thinking of. I don't remember a Pablo for that, but I also haven't, like I said, haven't made it to Light of the Jedi. So to know that there's a Palo Hidala, that's a nice nod.
Power's going to his head. He's naming every character. Now all the characters are going to be named some variation of Pablo Hidalgo. It's like...
That's right. The next one's going to be called Goblo Jidalgo. He's just going to, at some point, somebody's going to come in and take that pin away from him and be like, Pablo, we really got to stop.
I mean, Jedi had Admiral Holdo. We're getting there. We're getting closer to it.
Closer. We're working our way.
Poe is just Pablo smooshed together.
See, that's right. It's all, it keeps coming back around. Well, that brings us to number 2. And number 2 is a fantastic example.
Number 2.
Our man, Ello Asti. And this is one of my favorites for sure.
Yes. Ello Asti. Ello Asti is one of the Abednos, I believe they're called. New race of aliens from the Disney era. And apparently... I totally blanked on the guy's name. J.J. Abrams is such a huge Beastie Boys fan that they named all these characters, all these aliens minus one, are all named after all Beastie Boys references. So this is a reference to the song "Hello Nasty," and there's a whole bunch of other ones, "Slow and Low," and so if you're a Beastie Boys fan, research this, and you'll have a new appreciation for the Abednos and the J.J. Abrams' contribution.
Absolutely. So, and I didn't pull up the angle of it, but I know also on the side of his helmet in Arabesh, it says "Born to Ill," which is another good classic, Beastie Boys nod. But yeah, JJ's all about plugging the Beastie Boys into all of his Star Wars.
Sorry, that's my dog.
That's quite all right. Does your dog have a cool Star Wars name?
Hey, zip it. Sorry about that.
That's quite all right. Quite all right.
Anytime comes within 500 miles of the house. Hey.
Nice. Well, Ello Asti probably would have barked at him too, so it's totally fine.
Yes, exactly.
So that is a fantastic.
Not have a Star Wars name. His name is Filbert, not a Star Wars name.
Okay, that's all right. Totally fine. My dog doesn't have a Star Wars name either.
I try to keep my professional and my pet life, my pet life separate. So
that's smart. Although I will say, over the weekend while we were camping, we had a conversation around our dog right now. Her name is Sister or Sis or Sister Bear.
Sister.
Sister. And I say that a lot, and it's completely lost on my house. But I'm glad that you're there for me. But we did have the conversation lending to Indiana Jones about we named the dog Indiana and how Indiana would be a great name for a dog. And maybe one day we'll have a dog named Indiana. So
maybe.
I don't know. You never know. We'll stick with the one we got for now. Well, and speaking of dogs, that's a terrible transition because the next one's not at all about dogs. But we're going to move to number 1. Number one on your list, Jack Tano Porkins.
Oh my gosh, poor Porkins. Now, Porkins is an interesting case because in universe, his name is Porkins. Obviously, he's a plus size gentleman, and in the comic, his obviously his last name is Porkins. But in the comic, in the original novelization, the nickname for him they gave him was Piggy. I guess because he was either because he was fat or because his last name was Porkins, which proves that pigs and pig products exist in the Star Wars universe, settling theological debate for a long time. But what really cracks me up about poor Jack Porkins is the actor who plays him is named William Hootkins, which makes me think like, okay, so he was just originally a Red 6. And then they're like, you know what? No, we're gonna name this character after you. We're gonna call him Porkins because you're so fat. Like it's so. And also, he always plays characters that have names that have to do with. I think in Indiana, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, his name was like Major Eaton or something. So poor William Hootkins. I feel like they just kept stunt casting him just to see how much he would put up with the given names that are basically fat jokes.
It is really kind of tragic, and I remember thinking that even as a younger kid, I saw. I say this on the podcast all the time. I was born in '78, so Star Wars had just come out. Yeah. I wasn't old enough really to remember Empire, but I saw Return of the Jedi in the back of my parents' station wagon at a drive-in movie theater in Illinois. But I also, by the time I started watching Star Wars and was even as a little kid, I was like, Perkins, like that just seems mean. Like, why is this guy named Perkins?
He probably felt like he had to stay fat to like poor John Candy. Like he had to live up to his name. Everyone's like, they expect me to be fat, so.
And we'll say this too, and this is what I love about William Hootkins himself.
Uh-huh.
He was fabulous as Porkins in Star Wars, but he's also in Raiders of the Lost Ark. He's also the bad cop in the Michael Keaton Batman. Like, he's got some run and some stuff that I grew up loving, and so he deserves more credit than he gets.
Flash
Gordon, that's right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Superman 4, he was in Superman 4. Like, he was in a bunch of different stuff. So, again, he knew how to get into the movies, and he knew how to make a dollar doing something that I hope he loved. I hope he loved, being in an X-Wing and saying stay on target and, all the things that he did.
He didn't live to be in the Marvel. He didn't get to live to be in the MCU, where he truly would have been immortal.
He totally would have been like, a S.H.I.E.L.D. officer or, somebody else telling other people what to do. I think that would have worked for him.
Yeah. Well, it also, I'm going to go out on my soapbox here for a second. I'm going to say,
absolutely.
In Rogue One, we saw Red 5, Luke's predecessor, who's also a heavyset pilot and also dies in a very ignominious manner. So I think it's about time that Lucas stepped up and gave us a plus size hero that, like Snap Wexley ain't cutting it. Sorry.
Snap's not plus size enough. No, is that what we're saying?
The only thing that's snapping is my patience with him. So, and also, I think it's about time that Star Wars kind of do some damage repair for people who, like nowadays with scientific advancement, there are more people living with prosthetics of some kind than ever before. And yet, Star Wars, every time you see a character who's evil, it's because they have some mechanical hand or mechanical half face, or come on, this is 2021 already.
That's right.
So
maybe they're trying to fix some of that with what's her name, the bounty hunter from Mandalorian, Ming-Na Wen, her character.
Because she's got
she's got
robot abs.
The robot abs, and they're like, oh yeah, we fixed her because she got shot in the abs. So maybe we're starting to.
No one knows the burden that people live with who have literally washboard abs. You can't just sit up, ironically.
This one may work for you. Snap ? More like Splat Wexley. You see how that X-wing slammed into the Star Destroyer. Woo. That's a good one.
Did that happen in Rise of Skywalker?
It did.
So Snap has snapped.
Snap has snapped. Snap got the Thanos treatment.
This is a little bit more permanent than the Thanos version.
That's right.
I barely remember Rise of Skywalker.
Well, it's still coming up. You've got time to get really acquainted with it. Here in
like another shadow over everything we've built.
I'll bet it does. Well, your list is fantastic, and I can't help myself. Thank you. I do this a lot of times when we do lists, because this whole show, it's make a drink and let's do a list, because we never have enough lists in Star Wars.
Sure.
And so I always end up going, and here's one I love. And so I end up doing bonesses and things that I tack on to the end. So I have a couple more, and I would love your feedback on these. Okay. Here's a good one. I mean, Elon Sleaze Bagano. Talk about a name.
I have gone full circle on that one. I used to think it was terrible, but now I think it is amusingly terrible. And it's an Attack of the Clones where the bar is a lot lower.
That's exactly
partially
right.
set by the presence of characters like Elon Sleazebag.
Elon Sleazebag. Yeah. For me,
Sleazebag.
and
Yeah.
Sleazebag. I mean, that's it. And this is for me part of where the connection is. And I think my parents are watching tonight. They've started watching in the last couple of weeks. So, Mom and Dad, good evening. I'm sure you're proud of where I've come to, making a live Star Wars TV show on the internet. My dad was the only person I heard growing up who would refer to somebody as a sleazebag. Like, it may have been in a movie or a TV show, but every now and then I just remember he'd be like, yeah, that guy, he's kind of a sleazebag. And so when this happened in this movie and I was in college or out of college or whenever it was, like, immediately I was like, oh, this guy's supposed to be a sleazebag. He's selling death sticks and he's, you know, the skeezy guy at the bar, like every sleazebag at a bar. And it made me laugh. As terrible as it is, it made me laugh, and it still makes me laugh. So that was one of my bonus ones because, you know, any conversation of names, like, that's not even really Tuckerization. That's like, we're just putting it right there.
Yeah.
We're barely covering it up.
That's just Tucker.
Yeah. We're adding a G and we're hoping nobody notices. That's kind of what that feels like. And the next bonus one that I have, and this was my Rebels pull, Mart Matten. Mart Matten is Matt Martin from the story group. And
you don't say.
Yeah, imagine that. And I love that because I love Matt Martin. I love the stuff he puts out on Twitter. Of course, I don't know him personally, but, you know, to me, he's another good representative. I love Pablo, to be honest. He's been through ups and downs with the toxic Star Wars groups that we've talked about over the years. But Pablo, Matt Martin, those guys on Story Group that do engage, that, you know, every now and then will answer a tweet when you tag them and say, hey, is such and such or whatever. I'm always thankful when they respond back and go, well, as far as we know, it's not, you know, this or this or that. But I also look at it and, like, I see Matt Martin on Twitter or wherever I see him, I'm like, he's got to be younger than me. I want that job. How did he get to do that? I just, let me have a chance. But it's another great.
Did you apply?
I did not apply. Maybe that was the first problem I had. Oh, this is another good one. This is somebody threw in the live chat. You gents mentioned Rebels. The Coleman Trebor. Remember the character Guti Terez, named after Andy Gutierrez from the Star Wars show? That's another good one that was in Rebels.
No.
And so they've plugged several of those newer ones into Rebels. That's a good, you know, kind of modern connection for Star Wars and some of those names. Now, this last one that I put up as my other oh wait, I have two bonuses, but one's
I'm less bothered by putting them in the cartoons, which we all know aren't really canon. But the movies are another. That's like, you should require a higher, you know, standard for the movie.
It's a whole different thing. So really what you're saying is we need Mart Matten to show up in a movie in order for Mart Matten to really count.
Yes. Well, there's different levels. There's movies are that's it. You're in there. You're locked in. The live action TV show is just as good as a movie. Mandalorian, you're locked in. The cartoons where you start getting into trouble. Because I can see them, like, at some point, if they want to tell a different origin story for Saw Gerrera, then they're not going to say, well, we already said it, and then they're going to say, well, we don't care. We want to do a Saw Gerrera movie, make it happen, you know. So I think they're willing to overwrite the cartoon canon if need be, right. And then that just cascades downward from there. The comics, the novels,
it gives them more stuff to play with and pull from. That's all. It's just it's like minor leagues in baseball. We can pull people up whenever we need to.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, here's another one that I have in my kind of bonus overtime list. We have this guy, and I don't know if that's a good enough picture. Are you aware of this gentleman here? He was the security guard on Dryden Voss's pleasure yacht in Solo. And do you know this gentleman's name?
No, I do not. We haven't done Solo yet, so I'm totally in the dark.
This guy is Tot Ra.
Ra.
And so you have Tot from Raiders of the Lost Ark, who is the bad guy that gets his face melted, and you have the staff of Ra. And so you have another good, Lucasfilm Indiana Jones crossover, thanks to the Visual Dictionary.
This
was
is
one of my
work
favorites.
great. This is going to be great for the Indiana Jones boys working on their carbonite dream theory. You know that one, right? About
Yes, absolutely.
that all the events of Indiana Jones are Han Solo's fever dreams in carbonite. So this will work nicely with that.
This will work with that. And okay, so let me ask you this: you're a comic books guy.
Yes.
There's a comic that floats around the internet. I have it saved on my phone, and it is Indian Short Round in the jungle, and they find a body, and there's an arrow in it. And it's the whole thing, and he says something about, should we keep looking for the great beast? Short Round asks him the question, and the pull away in the last block of the comic is Chewie up in a tree, and it's the Falcon. And so it goes into that whole thing. Like, is that from an actual comic that you're aware of? Is that a fan art something? Do you know anything about that?
I've never heard of such a thing.
I'm going to send it to you to look at after we get done.
Is the implication that the Falcon has landed on Earth in 1937?
Somebody, yes, because the whole galaxy far, far away, long time ago. I think the implication is that it crashed in a jungle somewhere here. He has there's a dead body, which would seem to be Han, with an arrow in him, slumped over in the Falcon. And like I said, they pull away, and the last block is Chewie up in a tree looking over it.
Alive.
And it's yes, alive, looking, watching, while they're inside the ship. Okay. It's kind of wild. I don't and I don't know where it's from, but it's just one of those, like you said, the carbonite dream. Right. I remember a tattoo that I saw one time that I was really intrigued by was Indy in a crypt holding up a torch, and what he found was Han frozen in carbonite. And that worked for me because I have twin daughters, and my two oldest kids are twins. And there was a time a couple of years ago where one of them was obsessed with Star Wars and one of them was obsessed with Indiana Jones, and their favorite characters were Han and Indy. And so my wife and I joked that we should have a Harrison Ford birthday party and invite, which would have been fantastic to have all these like 8-year-old parents come into like, we're having a what kind of birthday party? And we never did it. But for me, that was the perfect crossing of two things I love, Indiana Jones and Star Wars, and just the funny way of how you could tie that together.
Would you have made all the other children dress up like their favorite Harrison Ford characters?
That would have been the request. Yes, that was actually
would have been like a Witness.
somebody from
Ford,
Witness, exactly.
Blade Runner,
the Sabrina remake. Exactly.
Yeah, maybe
that was the goal. Yes.
Now Han Solo, Harrison Ford in there.
Come as your party. Come as your, if we get a couple of Deckards in there, come as your favorite Harrison Ford.
No, only one each. That's the whole point. Is that it has to be like the confluence of all the characters coming together. So, well, I guess you could have an old Blade Runner and a young Blade Runner.
That's right. But we'd have had to have that party in the last couple of years, and I think we're farther back than that. So
yeah. All right.
Well, I have one more in my overtime list, and this is just purely for the sake of silliness, because Star Wars is nothing if not silly, and I think that we don't celebrate sometimes the silliness enough. We have this gentleman. We have Pal. Yeah. And for anybody who's informed and in the know, I'm not even going to attempt this for fear of pulling a muscle, but this is Pal's name. And I don't know how we pronounce that, but according to the visual dictionaries, we have a Paldak Draba Takat Sap Directi Niklinki Tiki Vith Nik Nesevef Likek. That's all I got.
Oh, I thought you were going to disappear back into your own dimension once they trick you into saying that.
That's right. I have to say it 2 more times. So it's like Beetlejuice. I'm going to get one tomorrow, and I'm going to get one sometime in the middle of the week, and then I'm just going to disappear.
I was going by Mixelflick rules. I'm sorry. I should have that one out.
That's right.
But
you got to know how this works.
Yeah. He's you can understand why they call him Pal.
Understandably. And this has to feel like one of those moments like late in the week in the writer's room, and somebody's had a bad morning, like somebody ate their lunch out of the refrigerator in the break room, and they're just really irritated, and they're like, you know what? Well, this is what this guy's name is going to be. Watch what I do. And he just hits a bunch of buttons. Like, that's how I think we ended up here.
He just runs. I thought you were going to say that was the sound he made when he ran into the bathroom and threw up. Blow me
There's no
down.
telling. That's right. I don't work at Lucasfilm, so I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But, any of those theories are plausible.
I'm going to guess that's some satanic stuff hidden in there. Like, that's Scott? That's can't be Pablo. Come on, look into that. Fix that up.
That's right. We need more details on Pal, whatever the rest of that is.
Yeah, that's just his nickname. His full name is much longer.
That's right. This is just what his. And imagine being Pal's mom, like when he got in trouble and she stood out on the front porch and had to yell it out into the neighborhood, and he only knew he was in trouble if she yelled that whole thing.
Right.
Like that would have been exhausting.
I remember when I was a kid and substitute teachers would come in and have to read strange names that they had never heard before. And so I'm imagining what Poe's substitute teacher, Pow's substitute teacher here would be like. But I remember as a kid thinking, like, by the time you're an adult, haven't you heard like every name by now? Like, what's good? Like, how are you stumped by reading names? So
that's right. Or you
Young
get
out.
thrown off. They go last name, first name, and that just throws off everybody completely. Like, there's no way to know what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a really good one. Well, this, my friend, has been a fantastic list. It has been a really fun discussion.
it was.
I do want you to take an opportunity. Obviously, you guys are working on Last Jedi right now. You finished up minute 35 on Friday. I am intently listening along each week.
1,235 episodes.
That's right. And we're going to be on 36 tomorrow, baby. What else do you want to plug? What are you guys working on? Obviously, you still have Rise of Skywalker ahead of you. I guess you have Solo ahead of you still.
Yeah, we still. Well,
what do you have coming up?
We started The Last Jedi much later than we normally do, so I'm not sure how that's going to interfere. I'm not sure how that's going to affect our Solo. And this is the longest of the movies, so we are going to keep going in release order, meaning Solo, and then I guess Rise of Skywalker. And then after that, question mark. So you can find it wherever you find podcasts, and also look for Godfather Minute. That's pretty much
absolutely
pretty much all there is.
Absolutely. Well, I can't thank you enough for hanging out with us tonight. Thanks to everybody in the live chat. Thanks to everybody in the live chat for joining us, for hanging out on a Sunday night, sharing your stories. There's lots of fun names. There's so many names that almost this could be a whole other episode, because Star Wars is nothing if not full of crazy names. And we got a Watto.
I don't own many Star Wars figures. This one was sent to me by a Star Wars Minute listener. So
nice.
Ironically,
Excellent.
I got a Watto for free.
A Watto for free. You didn't need money.
No.
Well, on behalf of the Podcast of the Wills family, I want to thank my wife for allowing me to hang out on Sunday nights and do this. I want to thank my children who are hopefully in bed, although they might be watching it on television. Thanks to everybody who subscribes. Follow us on Twitter. We are at WillsPod. Also find us on YouTube. We'd love for you to subscribe to our channel. We are currently on a journey to 100 subscribers. I'm not trying to make money here. I'd like to be able to have my own URL that says youtube.com/WillsPod. That's really all I'm trying to go for here. So if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe, hit the bell so that you get notifications when we come on. And I hope everybody has a good week. Remember to keep that hashtag spark of positivity going. And in the meantime, may the force be with you always.